The last thing out of section 3, chapter 2, is we're going to write related conditionals. We've been writing conditional statements, and they've been in the form if P, then Q. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom chart here. Okay, we've been writing this one. If P, then Q. We're going to write 3 more conditionals off of it. We're going to write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive, which is all related back to the conditional statement. So our converse, we're just going to flip them. It's going to become if Q, then P. We're going to take our conclusion and make it our hypothesis for our converse. The inverse, we're going to make it in the form if not P, then not Q. And finally, the contrapositive, we're going to say is in the form if not Q, then not P. All 3 of those relate back to the conditional. Once you get those written, we're going to come up with truth values. And if you are able to tell me the truth values of 2 of them, you can tell me the truth values of all of them, because we have logically equivalent statements here. The conditional statement, this one up at the top, is logically equivalent with the contrapositive. In other words, if you say that the conditional is true, then your contrapositive is also going to be true. And the same idea goes for converse and inverse. If you can tell me the truth value of one of them, then you know the truth value of the other one. These 2 will have the same truth value. So if you call, say for example, you call the converse false, then the inverse is also going to be false. Okay, when we do change the order of these things, our truth values can change. Not all the time, but they can change at times. Okay, we're going to do an example of this. I want to look at 4a. 4a says 2 angles that have the same measure are congruent. I would start by writing this in if-then form first. I would write the conditional. So I'm going to say my conditional, I'm going to label these. My conditional is in the form if P, then Q. So I'm going to say if 2 angles, I'm going to shorthand here, have the same measure, then they are congruent. Okay, that's going to be my conditional. Next, I want to write the converse. So if this one is in the form if P, then Q, the converse is going to be in the form if Q, then P. So I'm going to look back up here at the top. This is my P right here in yellow. That's the same measure. In blue is my Q. So now if I want to write the converse, we're going to say if 2 angles, if 2 angles are congruent, then they have the same measure. Okay, there's my converse. I'll label that here for us. It's a converse. The next one that we're going to write, we're going to call it the inverse. And our inverse is in the form, I'll get this written down here, inverse is in the form if not P, then not Q. So we're going to go right back up to the conditional. That's what we're relating it to. It says if 2 angles have the same measure, that was our P. So we're going to say if 2 angles don't have the same measure, then they aren't congruent. Okay, there's our inverse. Then we have one more, that's our contrapositive. Our contrapositive, that is in the form if not Q, then not P. We're going right back up to the conditional again. Okay, so this time we're going to say if they aren't congruent, then the angles don't have the same measure. Those are all our statements. Now we need to come up with the truth values of these things. So I'm going to go back up to the top. I'm going to go to the conditional first. If two angles have the same measure, then they are congruent. Well, that is in fact the definition of congruence, if they have the same measure. So we're going to say that our conditional is true. Remember on the previous slide, if the conditional is true, then we know that the contrapositive is true. I don't even really need to read it. I can if I would like. You don't have to. We know that the conditional and the contrapositive are logically equivalent. Next we'll go to the converse. If two angles are congruent, then they have the same measure. At times when you actually flip these, they can change the truth value. In this case it doesn't. It says if two angles are congruent, then they have the same measure. That is also true. Which means that the converse and inverse, those are logically equivalent. They will also, or the inverse will also be true, since it's logically equivalent with the converse.